How would you better move inside of your life if you embrace the idea that not everything needs to happen at once, and that you don't need to force everything into some sort of an unnatural balance, but rather you just start embracing the season that you're in and find a success in navigating that? Modern life and algorithms hold us to superficial standards of success and position while making no concessions for the ebbs and flows of life and the cycles of time that we move through. Life flows in rhythms, and if you've ever read Ecclesiastes, you may be familiar with the passage that reads, "To everything there is a season, a time and a purpose under heaven." So if you're anything like me and you are interested in pursuing the things that you'd like to, but living inside realistic expectations while you do that, and leaning into life's natural rhythms, times to work, times to rest, the times to create and reflect, in order to live a richer and more fulfilling experience, then by the end of this chat, we'll have considered all that goes into embracing purpose within each season and how that frees you from an impossible pursuit of balance and helps you to live with more intention and healthy expectations. If you don't know, my name is Chad Joshua, and I'm working my way towards writing a 100-song catalog. I write songs about populism, freedom, and liberty, and this channel is my artist channel, which I use to promote those songs. In my free time, I like to have these chats in order to consider useful strategies to employ in our efforts seeing our goals becoming accomplishments. I don't know that this particular topic is going to be one that trends or that it's going to have relatable keyword searches, but I did think it was important, and if you happen to find your way here, I hope that the idea of it resonates with you as much as it does with me, because in some way, life is like a giant symphony, and each season that we pass through, it represents a distinct movement of that. It's all purposeful. And there's a beauty in all of it, even in the things that we dislike the most. Why this rat race that we live in, working towards meeting standards that are oftentimes not sustainable, doesn't work, because it's all about timing, and you can't balance something that's not in sync with the time that you're in. When you're attempting to do that, it can lead to burnout and frustration. Striving to meet norms whenever life is constantly changing creates an unrealistic expectation of constant stability. Who has that? The reality of life doesn't seem to be meant to be perfectly balanced. It's a continual series of shifts and transitions. Trying to manhandle everything into a perpetual balance prevents you from acknowledging, dealing with, and living through the moment that you're in. When you give yourself the permission to recognize this, it allows you to focus on what is essential in this current season. Trying to hold things in balance and to keep them from shifting during a transitional time is like attempting to juggle too many balls at once. Eventually, something drops. But if you've given yourself the permission to see where you're at and to stop holding yourself to a false expectation, you can fully embrace the current season of life that you're living through. You know, for me, I have been writing songs for more than 30 years. I've been involved with bands, musicians, recording and production throughout all of that time. But you know, there's a struggle constant with adapting to the new now, and as fast as the changes seem to happen, you almost have whiplash trying to deal with them and acquaint yourself with how you fit into the big picture now. And I am certainly not immune from that. You know, one of the big problems is feeling comfortable with reinventing yourself into the new stage, and you know, life doesn't come with an operation manual. So for each person going through it, it's like trial and error again and again and again. And that's just one macro way that you could look at this. You know, for me, I'm not going to put out music or promote music in the same nature that I did when I was in my 20s, where I would look a fool. But then internally, I don't feel any different than I did when I was in my 20s. So I have to be conscientious of where it is that I'm at. And it isn't that we should self-censor our lives and preclude ourselves from opportunities because we're at a different point on the timeline. If I go out and I gyrate about like somebody half my age, I most certainly will be ridiculed, and if I was an audience member, I would likely ridicule myself as well. But I have to adapt to the season that I'm in. I have to redefine myself inside of that and make it work. That's one factor of this for me. The other seasonal factor that I'm dealing with is that I'm currently in a time period where I'm building at the beginning, not harvesting. I'm building all of my areas of capacity, and I'm building a collection of work. There are no accolades and there's no celebration of successes. It's just shoulder to the grind. and a constant practice of relentlessness. But let's look at this deeper. We'll focus on 4 primary seasons that we experience. The first being a season of planting, work, and growth. Throughout this portion of time, it's where with whatever we're doing, we're seeing to it that we're working to build a foundation for our future success. The next would be the season of harvest, and this would be a time of celebration and abundance. It would be the moments where you spend acknowledging and reaping the benefits and the rewards of your effort. Another would be the season of rest, where you would take time to recharge and for reflection. This is all necessary in order to sustain your growth by giving yourself moments to refresh and recuperate. And the fourth is the season of pruning. It's a time for letting go and for learning, clearing out the parts before that aren't harmonious any longer and preparing for new opportunities. Each of these time frames are important because they build upon the last. They're functional to the process and connective from one to the next. Struggles in one prepare you for growth in the next. Embracing the purpose of each of these moments helps you to find meaning and direction, no matter where you are. I always like to think about what I'm doing as it relates to farming, in that you can't have anything to harvest if you haven't planted anything. And without being well rested and ready, you wouldn't have the energy to do the work of planting. So what is it that you could accomplish if you gave yourself permission to thrive inside the season that you are in? The real challenge in all of this has to do with finding a way to best navigate the hard seasons when things are not easy and they don't seem fair. I think we have a natural tendency to rage against the machine and be angry and emotional about having to navigate something that is naturally more stressful to navigate than the celebratory times of harvest. But what could be taken from that if we stopped writhing against it, leaned into those times and started to take from them what we could, learning from them, testing ourselves and seeing where we might fall short in order to see where we could improve. I think we have a natural disposition to try to avoid things like this, get ourselves out of times like this. And I'm not trying to say we should go looking for difficult times. I'm just trying to point out that they are natural in the process of things, and that sometimes the simple act of being more thoughtful in how we frame it all to ourselves helps to navigate it all in a more intentional way. That said, I do think we are predisposed to doing our best to rush through these times or avoid them altogether. But we can embrace them in a way where we start to look for the lessons. What is this time of life teaching you? When we use it as an opportunity to practice trusting the process, the season is only temporary and it has a purpose, and it is necessary for you to move through it, to grow and to meet yourself in the future. And it gives us an opportunity to lean on our support, to seek wisdom and counsel from those people that we rely on for their thoughtful consideration. The hard times, they're like winter. They may feel barren, desolate, and empty, but the winter paves the way to spring. So how much more joy would you find if you focused on what the season offered instead of what it is lacking? To better align yourself, there's some things you could do. Identify where you're at in the timeline. Adjust your goals and expectations to match the season's purpose. If you are in a time of planting, then you should have any expectation about a harvest, and celebrate each stage as you move through it, what it was that you were able to take away from it. When we start to live graciously in the moment that we are on the timeline, it helps us to better focus our energy onto the things that matter the most right now. And all of that will help to avoid burnout. Life is like a tide. There is an ebb and a flow, and all of that lives inside a larger rhythm. What is something that you could do today to better align yourself with the season that you're in? If you haven't yet, I encourage you to identify the season that you're in right now and fully commit to embracing that this week even. Whether it's working hard, taking that much needed rest, letting go, or leaning into the harvest. Life isn't intended to be balancing everything all at once. It's about moving through each of these sections of time with purpose, because they all have a purpose. With purpose and grace. Embrace the rhythm. Let it shape each step that you need to take along your path, shape you into the person that you're meant to become. And while you do all that, keep your head up. And I'm going to keep my head up. And if you haven't had a chance to listen to my new song, you can hear it there. And we'll talk again soon.